Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri visits Dhaka, conveys New Delhi's concerns over attacks on minorities to the Bangladesh government. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches Bima Sakhi insurance scheme to empower women in the country. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky floats the idea of deploying foreign troops to Ukraine until the country joins NATO. And China's Ding Lijian draws level with Di Gukesh of India after a clinical win in Game 12 of the World Chess Championship. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Panipat in the Indian state of Haryana, where he launched Life Insurance Corporation of India's initiative called Bima Sakhi Yojana to empower women aged 18 to 70 years who are Class 10 pass. These women will receive specialized training and a stipend for the first 3 years to promote financial literacy and insurance awareness. After training, they can serve as LIC agents, and the graduate Bima Sakhis would have the opportunity to qualify for being considered for development officer roles in LIC. The Prime Minister said that women of India will play a vital role in fulfilling the vision of a developed India by 2047.
1947 से लेकर आज तक के कालखंड में हर वर्ग, हर क्षेत्र की ऊर्जा ने भारत को इस ऊंचाई तक पहुंचाया। लेकिन 2047 के विकसित भारत के संकल्प की सिद्धि के लिए हमें ऊर्जा के ढेर सारे नए स्रोतों की जरूरत है। ऊर्जा का ऐसा ही एक स्रोत हमारा पूर्वी भारत है, हमारे भारत का नॉर्थ ईस्ट है, और ऊर्जा का ऐसा ही महत्वपूर्ण स्रोत है हमारे देश की नारी शक्ति, भारत की नारी शक्ति। भारत को विकसित बनाने के लिए हमें अतिरिक्त ऊर्जा, ये कोटि कोटि हमारी माताएं बहनें हैं, हमारी नारी शक्ति है, वही हमारी प्रेरणा की स्रोत रहने वाली है। आज जो ये महिला सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप है, बीमा सखी है, बैंक सखी है, कृषि सखी है, ये विकसित भारत का बहुत बड़ा आधार स्तंभ बनेगी।
And Prime Minister Modi said that Rajasthan state is paving the way for a brighter future as he inaugurated the 3-day Rising Rajasthan Investment Summit on Monday. The Prime Minister called the summit a commendable effort, showcasing how Rajasthan is emerging as a hub for innovation, growth and entrepreneurship. He said the state was spurred by a rich heritage, a culture of enterprise and progressive policies. He said India has achieved success in every sector through the mantra of reform, perform and transform, and became the world's 5th largest economy.
हर इन्वेस्टर भारत को लेकर बहुत ही उत्साहित है। रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म के मंत्र पर चलते हुए भारत ने जो विकास किया है वो हर क्षेत्र में नजर आता है। आजादी के बाद के 7 दशक में भारत दुनिया की 11वीं सबसे बड़ी इकोनॉमी बन पाया था। उसके सामने पिछले 10 वर्ष में भारत 10th लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी से 5th लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बना है। बीते 10 वर्षों में भारत ने अपनी इकोनॉमी की साइज करीब करीब डबल किया है। बीते 10 वर्षों में भारत का एक्सपोर्ट भी करीब करीब डबल हो गया है। 2014 से पहले के दशक की तुलना में बीते दशक में एफडीआई भी 2 गुना से अधिक हुआ है। इस दौरान भारत ने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का खर्च करीब 2 ट्रिलियन रुपए से बढ़कर 11 ट्रिलियन तक पहुंचा दिया है।
India on Monday conveyed its concerns over recent developments, including those related to the safety and security of the minorities, to the Bangladesh government. A discussion was held between India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri and Bangladesh's Foreign Affairs Advisor Mohammad Tauheed Hossain. India's Foreign Secretary Misri said India desires a positive, constructive and mutually beneficial relationship with Bangladesh. He said India looks forward to moving the relationship forward in a positive, forward-looking and constructive direction. The Indian Foreign Secretary said India sees no reason why this mutually beneficial cooperation should not continue to deliver in the interests of both the peoples.
I have underlined today India's desire to work closely with the interim government of Bangladesh authorities. At the same time, we also had the opportunity to discuss certain recent developments and issues, and I conveyed our concerns, including those related to the safety and welfare of minorities. We also discussed some regrettable incidents of attacks on cultural, religious and diplomatic properties.
Earlier, the Indian official also held talks with his Bangladeshi counterpart Jashimuddin. This is the first high-level engagement between India and Bangladesh after a political change in Bangladesh on 5th August. The last such meeting was held at New Delhi in November 2023. And Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri wrapped up his one-day visit to Dhaka on Monday after calling on Mohammad Yunus, the chief advisor of the interim government of Bangladesh, during which he conveyed India's concerns, especially those related to the safety and welfare of minorities in that country. The Ministry of External Affairs said that during these meetings, Foreign Secretary Misri highlighted India's support for a democratic, stable, peaceful, progressive and inclusive Bangladesh, while reiterating New Delhi's willingness to build a positive and constructive relationship with Bangladesh based on mutual trust and respect and mutual sensitivity to each other's concerns and interests. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is in Russia, where he commissioned the Indian Navy's latest multi-role stealth guided missile frigate called the INS Tushil in Kaliningrad. Indian Navy Chief Admiral Dinesh K. Tripathi accompanied the minister. We now tell you more about this new Indian warship. India's newest stealth frigate is an upgraded Krivak 3 class frigates. 6 of them are already in service, 3 Talwar class ships and 3 follow-on Teg class ships. The INS Tushil, the 7th in the series, is the first of 2 upgraded additional follow-on ships, the contract for which was signed in October 2016 between JSC Rosoboron Export, the Indian Navy and the Indian government. The ship underwent a series of extensive trials beginning January this year. These trials included proving all Russian equipment fitted on board, including weapon firings. The ship would reach India in a near combat-ready condition, ready to deliver its effects from the word go. The ship stands as a symbol of the Indian Navy's undying commitment to safeguarding the country's maritime frontiers. Upon commissioning, the INS Tushil will join the sword arm of the Indian Navy, the Western Fleet, under the Western Naval Command and will rank amongst the most technologically advanced frigates in the world. Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra has been appointed as the new Governor of Reserve Bank of India, India's central bank. Malhotra, a 1990 batch Rajasthan cadre IAS officer, will replace Shaktikanta Das, whose tenure comes to an end on Tuesday. He'll be the 26th Governor of the Indian Central Bank. Malhotra was appointed as Revenue Secretary in October of 2022. Shifting focus to international updates now, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the world was surprised by the speed of Syria President Bashar al-Assad's fall from power. Austin was speaking in Japan while on his last trip to the Indo-Pacific as the U.S. Defense Secretary.
I think the entire international community was surprised to see that the opposition forces moved as quickly as they did, and everybody expected to see a much more stiff resistance from Assad's forces. So the speed at which that unfolded was surprising, I think, to most everybody in the international community.
Meanwhile, UN Rights Chief Volker Turk has said that any political transition in Syria following President Assad's ouster from power must include accountability for those responsible for crimes committed during his rule.
Any political transition must ensure accountability for perpetrators of serious violations and guarantee that those responsible are held to account. It is imperative that all evidence be collected and preserved meticulously for future use. Reform of the security apparatus will be key. This transition must also ensure that the tragedy of missing people is addressed.
Germany's Interior Minister on Monday said the assessment of asylum requests from Syrian refugees living in Germany would depend on developments in Syria after the ouster of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The minister said in a statement that concrete possibilities of return cannot be predicted at the moment, and it would be unprofessional to speculate about them in such a volatile situation. Earlier on Monday, the ministry announced that the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees had all Syrian asylum applications on hold until there was more clarity on political developments in the country. Meanwhile, crowds queued up at a border crossing between Syria and Turkey a day after Islamist-led rebels swept into Damascus and President Bashar al-Assad fled the country. 12 days after a fragile ceasefire took effect on 27 November between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, all eyes are now on a possible ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The Israeli Broadcasting Authority cited unnamed sources as saying that the two sides are close to finalizing a deal that would include a 2-month ceasefire. The deal would involve the release of prisoners on humanitarian grounds, including the elderly, women, the wounded and the sick, and the withdrawal of Israel's army from some parts of the Gaza Strip. Hamas and the mediators Egypt and Qatar have not commented on the report. For now, a Hamas delegation left Cairo after meeting with the head of Egypt's spy agency. Hamas has submitted an initial list of names of hostages who would be included in a possible hostage deal. Israel estimates that there are currently more than 100 Israeli prisoners in Gaza. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky floated the idea of foreign troops being deployed to war-stricken Ukraine until the country joins the NATO military alliance. Zelensky made the remark during a joint press conference in Kyiv with Germany's opposition leader Friedrich Merz as Donald Trump's imminent return to the White House intensifies talk of a possible deal to end Russia's 33-month-old war. Ukraine, which has made a concerted push to obtain an invitation to join NATO, has insisted throughout the war that it needs security guarantees to prevent Russia launching another invasion after the current hostilities are halted. The Ukrainian leader told journalists that he was hoping to call outgoing US President Joe Biden in the coming days to discuss about NATO membership. France's President Emmanuel Macron on Monday called for a meeting of different political forces to discuss forming a new government. According to Green Party's boss Marine Tondelier, speaking after meeting Macron, the French president indicated that the solution could no longer be based on an agreement with the far-right National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen. Meanwhile, days after orchestrating the downfall of the French government, Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally has lost a seat in a by-election in northeastern France. Critics of her party pounced on Sunday's narrow defeat as a sign of voter condemnation of the party's push last week to topple former Prime Minister Michel Barnier's government over his 2025 budget bill. Right now, take a look at what else is making news around the world. The Netherlands will impose controls on its land borders, all of which are with fellow countries in the European Union's Schengen border-free zone, and some flights from within the Schengen zone from Monday. The controls are set to last 6 months. Thousands of angry Volkswagen workers went on a 4-hour-long warning strikes across Germany on Monday and gathered at the carmaker's Wolfsburg headquarters, demanding plans for wage cuts and plant closures be scrapped. The Rock a Rail ski and snowboard tour drew to a close as some of the world's best snowboarders and free skiers arrived at The Hague for the final stop of the season. Snowfest The Hague featured a large Rock a Rail cage 43 meters long and 17 meters wide for the competitors to use to show off their best tricks. And still to come on DD India Live. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol banned from foreign travel. And Taiwan on high alert after detecting Chinese warships near the island.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Complex issues hidden.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. As the world is going more digital in pretty much all facets of life, learning has to keep up with that trend. But in Germany, digitalization in schools has been a surprisingly contentious problem. Now, the German government has found an agreement on how to lead students into a more digital world. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin. Lars, what can you tell us about this latest deal?
Thanks for having me. So it's called the Digital Pact 2.0. 2.0, obviously, because there was initially a 1.0, the original plan to get schools to be more digital. Scratchy old chalkboards were replaced by whiteboards and screens. Many schools got laptops and tablets for all their students, and teachers took extra classes to train for new hardware, software, and even new teaching methods. Then, of course, money ran out. The government had invested 6.5 billion euros, with 90% being paid by the federal government and 10% by the state and local governments. all that money was invested well. If you ask anyone in the field, really, most of it went into hardware, lots into networks, Wi-Fi and such. And over the years, I think I must have heard kids from every German state being interviewed about what changed for them, and all being really excited about the new learning tools and how it prepares them better for a digital world. So it's been pretty clear for a while that this digital pact would have to be renewed.
Now, so why has there been such a long and heated debate then?
Well, as so often, it's about two things: who's going to pay and who's going to decide where all the money is going. And to be totally honest, it sounds like such a waste of time. The question whether the federal government pays more or the state government pays more is of literally no relevance to taxpayers anyway. Now it seems Berlin will pay a bit less and the state governments pay a bit more, and the money will be spent pretty much as before, most of it going into equipment. And then here's one thing I stumbled over: while there will be more and improved classes for teachers to upgrade their skills, those won't be mandatory for teaching staff any longer. And that seems a bit weird to me. After all, what good is the best digital equipment as long as teachers don't know how to use it? Many teachers, of course, are fully on board with digitalization, but apparently not all. And it just seems we have to make it clear to the rest too that it is their job to prepare kids for the world as it is once they leave school, and not the world as it once was, maybe back when some of those teachers chose their profession.
So is this latest agreement pretty much what the country needed, or will it take more?
Well, the biggest problem I'm seeing at this point is the timing. This agreement over the Digital Pact 2.0 was reached just now at a time when we're heading into snap elections. And the agreement as it was reached is apparently not binding to a newly elected government. That means that 2 years of talking about this, 2 years of working on compromises and finding another 5 billion euros to invest might, in a worst case scenario, not have led to more than a handshake agreement and another round of negotiations once we have a new government in place. Let's hope that whoever wins the upcoming elections will simply understand that what's on this latest agreement is pretty good, and that it's important to act on it as soon as possible.
Right, Lars, thank you. Lars Halter reporting there from Berlin. Shifting focus to the Indo-Pacific now, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol has been banned from traveling abroad by the country's official corruption investigation office. Yoon is under probe for his declaration of martial law last week. Now, this comes after the country's defense ministry said Yoon was still the commander-in-chief. Yoon's grip on power has come into question, with dissent growing among senior military officers against the president, and his own party saying it would establish a task force to handle his eventual resignation. Yoon has rejected calls to step down despite a criminal investigation against him for alleged treason. In more news from the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan's military has raised its alert level after detecting Chinese warships near the island, Taipei said, as it prepared for likely drills by Beijing in response to President Lai Ching-te's U.S. visits. Taiwan's defense ministry said it also spotted Chinese Coast Guard vessels. It said People's Liberation Army of China had restricted the airspace off the Chinese coast. There's been intense speculation about the possibility of China launching military exercises in response to Lai's trip to the Pacific last week that included stopovers in Hawaii and Guam. To sports news now, China's Ding Lijian beat Indian teenage challenger D Gukesh in the 12th game of the World Chess Championship 2024 on Monday. Ding hit back with a win in Game 12 right after losing the previous game to Gukesh on Sunday. In Game 11, Gukesh stunned world champion Ding with a breathtaking queen sacrifice, forcing him to resign on the spot. With 2 more games left in the World Championship, the scores are tied 6-all. In cricket, Indian pacer Mohammad Siraj has been fined 20% of his match fee, while Australian batter Travis Head has been reprimanded following their altercation during the second test between Australia and India in Adelaide on Monday. In addition, one demerit point was also added to Siraj and Head's disciplinary records. This was the first offence in the last 24 months for both players. The incident took place in the 82nd over of Australia's first innings when Siraj bowled Head and gave him an animated send-off by pointing towards the Australia change room. Head retorted verbally before leaving the field, and the on-field umpires also had a word with Siraj. India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati has launched an OTT platform called Waves. Waves offers a complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. If you want great content for free, then download Waves now. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.